My brother locked my 7-year-old son inside a hot car during the family picnic. He knew my son couldn't open the child lock. My brother snapped, "Don't touch the window. Your brat isn't worth the glass." My mother added, "Stop saving him." My son was screaming, and I was the only one who smashed the window to save him. I didn't cry. I took my son home. 2 weeks later, my mother called me, screaming from my brother's driveway. My son's fists were hitting the glass from the inside. Both fists, both palms alternating, the way a child hits a window when he has already tried the handle and the handle did not work. His mouth was open and the sound coming through the glass was muffled, but it was not a scream anymore. It had been a scream a minute ago. Now it was thinner than that. Higher, the sound a 7-year-old makes when he understands that nobody is coming. The car was a silver 4-door sedan parked at the far edge of the gravel lot, 40 feet from the picnic pavilion, where 12 members of my family were eating potato salad and laughing at something Keith had said. The sun was directly overhead. The dashboard thermometer in my own car had read 94 degrees when we arrived. Asher had been inside for 17 minutes. My brother was leaning against the pavilion post with a paper plate in one hand and a can of beer in the other. He was watching me walk toward the car. He was not alarmed. He was smiling the way he smiles when he has done something he considers educational. The way a man smiles when he believes his cruelty has a lesson in it. "Do not touch that window," Keith said. He said it loud enough for the table to hear. Loud enough for my mother, for my aunt, for Keith's wife, for my cousin who had driven up from Decatur with her kids. "Your kid touches everything because you cannot control him, Nell. That is what happens when a boy has no father and a mother who counts other people's money for a living." He set the beer down on the railing. "Do not touch the window. Your brat is not worth the glass." My mother was standing 6 feet behind Keith, arms crossed, watching Asher's hands hit the glass from 40 feet away. She could hear him. Everyone at that table could hear him. The sound carried across the gravel and the dry grass and the hot air that sat on that parking lot like a lid. "Stop saving him," my mother said. "He needs to learn, and so do you." Asher's voice cracked on the other side of the glass. His palms were leaving wet prints on the window. His face was red, not the red of crying, but the red of heat, the red that comes before something worse. His shirt was dark at the collar with sweat. He was pushing the door handle with both hands and it was not moving because the child lock was engaged and the rear doors of that car do not open from the inside when the child lock is on, and Keith knew that, and Keith had put him in the back seat and closed the door and walked away. My hands did not shake. That is the part people do not believe when this story gets told, but it is the truth. My hands were steady, the way they are steady when the thing in front of you is not a problem you need to think about, but a fact you need to end. The tire iron was in my trunk, 22 inches of steel with a lug wrench on one end and a flat pry bar on the other. The trunk of my car was 8 steps from where Asher's hands were hitting the glass. 8 steps. Trunk open. Tire iron in my right hand. One swing. The rear passenger window cracked in a spiderweb pattern from the center and then collapsed inward in a shower of safety glass that scattered across the back seat and Asher's lap and the hot leather that had been burning the backs of his legs. He reached for me through the broken window. His hands were wet and hot and shaking, and he grabbed my shirt with both fists and did not let go. Lifting him out through the frame, brushing the glass off his shorts and his arms, carrying him to my car. His skin was flushed and hot to the touch. The ER would document his temperature at 102.4 an hour later. Early heat exhaustion, dehydration, and superficial contact burns where the leather seat had pressed against the backs of his thighs. A 7-year-old boy with burns on his legs because his uncle decided the glass was worth more than his body. Nobody at the picnic table stood up. Nobody walked over. My mother turned back to the food. Keith watched me carry Asher to my car, and he took a sip of his beer and said something to his wife, and she laughed. The glass from the window was on the gravel. One piece, roughly the size of a playing card, sat near my left tire. Curved slightly, still warm from the sun, one edge catching the light. After Asher was buckled in with the AC on full blast and a water bottle pressed to his forehead, after the door was closed and his breathing started to slow, after all of that was done, I walked back to the piece of glass, picked it up, put it in a Ziploc bag from the emergency kit in my glove box, wrote the date on the bag with a Sharpie. August 17th, 2024, that is what I do. That is what a bookkeeper does. We date things. We label things. We file things so they can be found later when someone needs proof that the thing happened. The drive to the ER was 14 minutes. Asher did not cry. He held the water bottle against his forehead with both hands and stared at the seat in front of him and did not speak. His silence was worse than the screaming. The screaming had meant he was fighting. The silence meant something had been taken from him that he did not know how to name. At St. Joseph's, Dr. Rena Cho treated him. 102.4 degrees. Early heat exhaustion, dehydration, and superficial contact, burns on both thighs where the leather seat had pressed against his skin through his shorts. The nurse took 4 photographs for the medical file, both legs, his flushed face, and the back of his neck where the sun through the rear window had left a pink stripe. Asher sat on the exam table and did not flinch when the nurse applied burn cream. He just looked at me with eyes that were asking something his mouth did not have words for yet. Recommended follow-up in 72 hours and referral to pediatric counseling. The bill would come later, $847 for the ER visit, $160 for the follow-up, $210 for the first counseling session, $1,217 because my brother decided a lesson was more important than a life. At the follow-up appointment, the pediatrician asked Asher to draw what happened. He drew a car. Inside the car, a small figure with both hands on the window. Outside the car, nothing. No people. No grass. No sky. Just a car and a boy, an empty space where family should have been. The pediatrician looked at the drawing for a long time and then wrote something in the file and then looked at me and said, "This is not a behavioral child. This is a child who was abandoned in a container." That was August 17th, Saturday afternoon. The day my son learned that family is not always safe. The day I stopped being the sister who keeps the books and started being something else entirely. Before the car, there was a pattern, not a single event, a system. The kind that builds so slowly you do not notice it until something forces you to look at every wall at once. My father died in March of 2022. Heart attack at 61 at the kitchen table. Coffee still warm when the paramedics arrived. He was a route driver for a dairy distributor, not wealthy, but careful. He left a paid-off house, a life insurance payout of $85,000, a small IRA with $64,000 in it, and a will that said everything goes to Doris and, quote, "my children equally if she passes before them." Doris asked me to handle the finances. Not Keith. Me, because Keith runs a landscaping business that operates out of the back of 2 trucks and a storage unit, and the one time my father asked Keith to balance his own checkbook, Keith wrote a number on a napkin and said, "Close enough." My father did not ask again. Handling the finances meant doing Doris's taxes, reconciling her checking and savings, managing the IRA distributions, and, because Keith asked and my mother insisted, keeping the books for Adler Landscaping LLC, revenue, expenses, payroll for 2 part-time employees, quarterly tax estimates, all of it, every month, for free. Faye Russo, the senior CPA at my firm, told me once that doing family books for free is the financial equivalent of leaving your front door unlocked. "You are not helping them," she said. "You are giving them a room where nobody checks the closets." When my father died and I missed 2 weeks of work, Faye covered my entire client load without being asked. She left a card on my desk that said, "The numbers will wait. You will not." She did not say she was sorry. She said the thing that mattered more. Keith had always been the son who stayed close. He lived 4 miles from my mother. He mowed her lawn, fixed her gutters, drove her to appointments. These were the things my mother talked about when she talked about Keith. What she did not talk about was that Keith's landscaping business had lost money every quarter for the past 2 years. that his commercial trucks had no insurance, that he borrowed cash from Doris every month and called it a float until the next contract hits. The next contract never hit. When Asher was born, Keith was the first to say, he is going to be a handful. Not congratulations, not welcome to the family. He is going to be a handful. And when Leon and I divorced 2 years later, amicable, co-parenting, no drama, Keith's summary was shorter. That did not take long. My mother laughed. Not because it was funny, because agreeing with Keith was easier than arguing, and she had been choosing easier for as long as anyone could remember. Asher is not wild. Asher is 7. He runs. He touches things. He asks questions that have no answers, and he climbs things that are not meant to be climbed, and he laughs so loud in grocery stores that strangers turn around. That is not a disorder. That is a boy. But in my family, Asher's energy was treated like a flaw that Nell could not fix, because Nell could not keep a husband, and Nell counts other people's money, and Nell moved 20 minutes away, and that was apparently a betrayal equal to leaving the country. There were smaller things before the car. There are always smaller things. At Easter dinner 4 months before the picnic, Keith grabbed Asher's arm hard enough to leave a red mark because Asher reached for a dinner roll before Grace was finished. At Doris's birthday in May, Keith told Asher to sit in the hallway because he was too loud for the dining room. Asher sat in the hallway for 40 minutes eating cake off a paper plate on the floor while the rest of the family ate at the table. My mother saw it and said nothing. When I brought it up in the car later, she said, "Keith is trying to help. You are too soft with him." Too soft. That was the word they used. Soft. As if protecting a child from being grabbed and isolated by a grown man was a weakness the family needed to correct. If you are watching this and your family treats your child like a problem they did not sign up for, you know how this shapes every visit, every car ride, every holiday table. If this is hitting close, consider subscribing to Family Secret Tales. Because this story does not end at the picnic lot. It ends somewhere none of them expected. Monday morning. August 19th. Asher was at Leon's apartment, where he would stay for the week because Leon took one look at the burns on his legs and said, "File everything." Leon is quiet, but when he speaks, the sentence is always finished. 2 stops. First, the police station on Route 12. Officer Dana Marsh took the report. Every detail, the time, the temperature, the child lock, the window, the ER records. She asked for the name on the vehicle registration. "Keith Adler," I said. "We will verify. Give me the plate number and we will run it." She called me the next day, Tuesday, August 20th. Her voice was careful, the way a cop's voice is careful, when the information changes the shape of the case. The vehicle is not registered to Keith Adler. It is registered to Doris Adler, your mother. The car my son was locked inside. The car whose window I smashed with a tire iron. The car Keith used to trap a 7-year-old in a 138-degree interior. That car belonged to my mother. Her name on the title, her name on the registration, her car, her child lock, her glass. Does your mother know Keith uses this vehicle? She gave it to him. He drives it every day. But the title is in her name. Yes, then your mother is the registered owner of the vehicle involved in the child endangerment incident. The Ziploc bag with the glass shard was on my desk, next to my keyboard, next to the monitor where my client's numbers glowed in neat rows. A bookkeeper's desk. A bookkeeper's evidence bag. A bookkeeper's mother, whose name was now in a police file, connected to her grandson's burns. That night, after the call, after the dishes, after the apartment was quiet, and the only light was the desk lamp, I opened my laptop. Not the work laptop, the personal one. The one with the folder labeled Adler Family Finances that I had maintained for 2 years because my mother asked, and I never said no. I had never audited the folder. Auditing family means you suspect family, and suspecting family means the wall between you and them has a crack in it that you put there on purpose. So the folder stayed organized, but unexamined. Receipts filed. Tax documents sorted. Bank statements downloaded. Keith's business books reconciled to the penny because that is what I do. But never read. Not really read. Not the way Faye taught me to read a set of books, which is not left to right but backward, starting with the outflows and asking one question: where did the money go? I almost did not open the IRA statements. They were in a subfolder labeled Retirement, and the subfolder had not been touched since the last quarterly download in July. Opening it meant looking at my mother's money with the same eyes I use for clients who suspect their partners of skimming. Opening it meant my mother was no longer my mother in this chair. She was a file. The mouse hovered. The glass shard sat in its bag on the desk. Asher's ER discharge papers were in a manila envelope next to it. 102.4 degrees. First-degree burns. Mild dehydration. 7 years old. The subfolder opened. Doris's IRA had a balance of $17,209. 2 years ago, when my father died, the balance was $64,000. $47,000 had left that account in 18 months. Not in one withdrawal. In 23. Small enough to avoid automatic flags. $1,500 here. $2,000 there. $3,000 on a Tuesday in March. $2,200 the week Asher was born. They came in clusters, 2 or 3 per month, like a heartbeat. Every withdrawal was an electronic transfer. Every transfer went to the same destination, Adler Landscaping LLC operating account, ending in 4471. Keith's business. My brother had been draining my mother's retirement for a year and a half. He had taken nearly 3/4 of the IRA my father left behind, and what remained would not last 2 winters. I almost closed the laptop. Almost told myself the IRA was between Keith and Doris, and that the police report was enough, and the financial records were not my business anymore. But bookkeepers do not close laptops. Bookkeepers open the next folder. And the next folder was the one labeled Withdrawal Authorizations. Every IRA distribution requires a signed authorization form. The custodian keeps a copy. The account holder keeps a copy. 23 withdrawals. 23 forms. I had downloaded them automatically during the quarterly reconciliations and never looked at them, because looking at your mother's signatures on her own withdrawal forms is not something you do when you trust her. Every form was signed. Doris Adler. Her handwriting, her loops, her cramped lowercase letters, she had authorized every withdrawal. She knew. She signed. 23 times she signed a form sending her own retirement money to her son's failing landscaping business, and she never told me. But the withdrawal forms had attachments. Keith had stapled handwritten repayment schedules to each one, showing specific contracts and projected repayment dates. Hernandez retaining wall, $4,200. Repayment by March. County drainage bid, $11,000. Repayment by June. Darlene Oaks could not have done it better. Except the contracts did not exist. The Hernandez job was a $400 mulch delivery. The county drainage bid was never submitted. Keith had invented a paper trail of future income to make each withdrawal look like a short-term business loan that would be repaid within 90 days. None of them were repaid. Not $1. Doris believed the schedules, or chose to believe them. She signed because her son told her the money would come back, and she needed to believe it the way a person standing on thin ice needs to believe the ice will hold. It did not hold. And now there was $17,000 where $64,000 used to be. The mother who said stop saving him had been saving Keith with her own future. And she never said a word. If you are still here, you already know this is not a story about a hot car. It is a story about what a family hides behind the people they ask to do the paperwork. Hit that subscribe button for family secret tales. The confrontation is coming, and it starts with a Ziploc bag. I almost drove to my mother's house that night. The keys were in my hand, the bag of glass in my pocket, the laptop open on the kitchen table with $47,000 of missing retirement glowing on the screen. For 30 seconds, the only thing in the room was a daughter who had just read her own mother's handwriting on 23 forms that proved the woman who told her to stop saving her son had been saving her brother with money that should have been keeping her alive in her 70s. The keys went back on the hook. Not because the anger passed. Because anger without documentation is a conversation. Anger with documentation is a filing. Friday morning. One more folder. Adler Landscaping LLC. Keith's business records, the ones I had been reconciling monthly for 2 years. Revenue, expenses, payroll, quarterly estimates. I had kept them clean because keeping things clean is my job. Now I read them the way Faye reads them. Keith's LLC had no active commercial general liability policy. The policy my mother paid the premiums for had lapsed 14 months ago. Keith had been cashing the premium checks Doris wrote him and never forwarding them to the carrier. $280 a month times 14 months was $3,920 in premiums that went into Keith's pocket instead of the insurance company. No workers' compensation for his 2 part-time employees, despite the coverage requirements that applied to the commercial contracts he was taking. And the 2 trucks. The 2 Ford F-250s Keith used for every job. The ones with Adler Landscaping painted on the doors. Registered owner, Doris Adler. Both of them. Lapsed commercial registration. No commercial plates. Operating commercially on personal plates with an owner who had no idea her name was on 2 uninsured commercial vehicles doing business on public roads. If one of those trucks hit a pedestrian, if one of those employees fell off a ladder, if a client's retaining wall collapsed, the liability would not stop at Keith. It would climb the registration, climb the title, and land on the 64-year-old woman whose name was on every piece of paper because her son told her it was just easier that way. Monday morning, August 26th. Faye sat across from me at the break room table, coffee going cold, and looked at the printouts. "This is not a family problem," she said. "This is a filing. The IRA pattern is textbook elder financial exploitation. The insurance lapse while collecting premiums is fraud. And the uninsured commercial vehicles in your mother's name expose her to unlimited personal liability. She signed the withdrawal forms. She signed them because her son told her to. That does not change the pattern. It changes who is both a victim and an accessory." Faye put the printouts back in the folder. "You need an attorney who understands elder law. Not a family lawyer, an elder law specialist." The attorney's name was Candace Pryor. She had an office on Miller Street with a view of the courthouse and a waiting room that smelled like old paper and new carpet. She reviewed the file in 40 minutes. 5 legal and regulatory tracks, she said. Child endangerment is already with the police. CP's report is in process, documenting the pattern of unsafe behavior around your son. The new filings, elder financial abuse complaint with the state attorney general, naming Keith as the perpetrator and your mother as both victim and knowing participant. State licensing board complaint for operating without required insurance and workers' compensation. And a civil demand for your son's medical costs, billed directly to Keith. What happens to my mother? The elder abuse complaint protects her as a victim, but her signatures on the withdrawal forms and her presence at the car incident complicate that protection. She was there. She told you to stop saving your son. She is the registered owner of the vehicle. The state will interview her separately. 5 mechanisms. 5 walls closing. Every one of them built from paper I had been filing for 2 years without reading. Tuesday, August 27th. 10 days after the picnic. My mother had called a family meeting. Her words, delivered through a voicemail at 7:14 a.m., "This has gone far enough, Nell. Come to the house tonight. We are going to settle this like family." Settling it like family meant pressure me into dropping the police report. That was the only reason for the meeting. Keith would be there. My mother would be there. The kitchen table would be set with the same dishes my father used to eat breakfast from, and the implicit message would be, "Look at this table, look at this house, do not destroy what your father built." Arrived at 6 p.m. with a folder, the Ziploc bag, and nothing in my chest except arithmetic. Keith was sitting at the kitchen table with his arms crossed. Doris was at the counter, drying a dish that was already dry. Keith's wife was in the doorway to the living room, half in and half out, the way people stand when they are not sure they want to be in the room. The neighbor, Mrs. Alcott, had come over to return a casserole dish and was standing near the back door, holding the dish with both hands, clearly wishing she had come 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later. "Sit down," my mother said. "We need to talk about what happened. What happened is documented." The folder went on the table. The Ziploc bag went on top of it. The glass shard caught the kitchen light. "That is a piece of the window I broke to get my son out of a car on a 94-degree day. The ER recorded his temperature at 102.4. He had contact burns on both thighs from the seat leather. He is in counseling. The bill so far is $1,217. Keith uncrossed his arms. He was in the car for 10 minutes. Kids sit in cars all the time, 17 minutes, with the child lock on a day when the outside temperature was 94 degrees. You engaged the child lock because you knew he would try to get out, and then you walked away and ate potato salad. He needed to learn to sit still. He needed oxygen. The doctor documented early heat exhaustion and contact burns on both legs. The word she used in the discharge summary was dangerous. Doris set the dish down. "Nell, this is a family matter. You did not need to involve the police." "The police are not the problem, Mom." Open the folder. First page. "This is the vehicle registration for the car Asher was locked inside. It is registered to you. Doris Adler. Your name, your title, your car." But that is not the worst part. You were standing 40 feet away. You heard him screaming. You told me not to save him. The police report lists you as the registered owner of the vehicle, and it lists you as a witness who obstructed the rescue. My mother's hand went to the counter, not for support, for something to hold. This is the IRA distribution history for your retirement account. Second page. $64,000 26 months ago. $17,209 today. 23 withdrawals, totaling $47,000, every one transferred to Adler Landscaping, LLC. Turn to Keith. Your business account. Your operating funds. $47,000 of Mom's retirement. Keith's jaw set. She offered. I did not steal anything. This is the withdrawal authorization for March 14th. Third page. Slitted across the table. Your handwriting on the memo line, Keith. Truck repair. The amount is $3,000. The truck repair invoice from Benson's garage that month was $642. Where did the other $2,300 go? Keith did not answer. Page 4. The insurance premium checks Mom wrote you for the commercial liability policy. $280 a month for 14 months. $3,920. The policy lapsed 14 months ago. You cashed the checks and never sent a payment. That is insurance fraud. Page 5. Your 2 commercial trucks are registered in Mom's name. No commercial plates, no commercial registration, no workers' comp for your 2 employees. If anyone gets hurt on one of your job sites, the liability falls on the registered owner. Looked at my mother. That is you. Doris sat down. Not the way a person sits when they choose a chair. The way a person sits when their legs decide for them. Her hands went flat on the table, palms down, the way you press a surface when you need to feel something solid underneath you. Keith's wife stepped fully out of the doorway and pulled her phone from her pocket and stared at the screen without reading it. Mrs. Alcott set the casserole dish on the counter next to the sink and left through the back door without saying a word. You told me to stop saving him, I said to my mother. Those were your words. At the picnic, while your grandson screamed in the backseat of your car, you told me to stop saving him. Pointed at the IRA statements. But you have been saving Keith 23 times, $47,000. You saved him with your retirement money while you stood in a parking lot and told me my son was not worth saving. Keith stood up. His chair scraped the floor. This is insane. You are going to blow up the whole family over a car window. Your nephew's skin blistered on the seat leather. His temperature was 8 degrees above normal. He cannot sleep with the windows closed. He draws pictures of cars with nobody outside them. That is not a car window, Keith. That is a police report, a CP's file, and a civil demand for $1,217 that your attorney will receive by certified mail on Friday. Keith turned to Doris. Tell her. Tell her what we talked about. Tell her you will handle it inside the family. My mother's voice came out flat. If you do this, Keith loses the business. And if Keith loses the business, I lose the house. You lost $47,000 of your retirement to a business that has not turned a profit in 2 years. You are already losing the house. The only difference is who told you. Doris tried once more. Quieter now, the voice of a woman testing a rope she knows will not hold. Your father would not have wanted this. My father left you $64,000 to live on. 47 of it went to Keith's truck payments and gas station lunches. If Dad could see this IRA statement, the only thing he would not have wanted is what you let Keith do with his money. Keith stepped toward me. Fine, I am sorry about the car. But you need to drop the report or Mom loses everything. And that is on you. The apology tasted like vinegar and conditions. The file in my bag had one more page. The elder financial abuse complaint, naming Keith as the perpetrator, naming Doris as both victim and knowing participant. The page came out of the bag. Placed on the table, on top of Keith's truck repair memo and my mother's signed withdrawal form, next to the Ziploc bag of glass that caught the kitchen light and threw a thin line across the wood. You said my son was not worth the glass. That glass is in an evidence bag. You were standing 40 feet away and you told me to let him burn. Your signatures are on every withdrawal. Keith's jaw went loose. His hand reached for the back of the chair and missed and reached again. The color drained from his face the way water drains from a sink, slow at the top, and then, all at once. He leaned against the wall behind him, and his shoulders sagged, and his eyes moved to the pages on the table and stopped. Doris did not move. She was staring at her own signature on the withdrawal form. The one that said truck repair. The one where the math did not add up. Her lips moved once, no sound, and her fingers pressed harder against the table surface. This is the last time I sit at this table. The last set of books I will reconcile. The last tax return I will file. Every form I have filed for this family for 2 years is saved, backed up, and shared with my attorney. You do not get to use my work to hide what you did and then tell me my son is not worth saving. Asher was at Leon's. The car was in the parking lot. The bag of glass stayed on the table. The folder stayed on the table. Everything stayed on the table. The door closed behind me and the night air hit my face, and it was cooler than it had been in 10 days. The filings went out over the next 3 days. The elder financial abuse complaint to the Attorney General's office. The state licensing board complaint. The civil demand letter for medical costs sent certified to Keith's home address. The child endangerment report was already with the police. The CP's report was already in process. 5 legal tracks. 2 already moving, 3 filed over the next 3 days. Every one of them built with numbers my own hands had been organizing for 2 years. The financial fallout reached Keith first. The state licensing board opened an investigation within 4 business days. An inspector contacted Keith requesting proof of commercial general liability insurance, workers' compensation coverage, and valid commercial vehicle registration. Keith had none of it. His operating license was suspended pending compliance. The 2 trucks with Adler landscaping on the doors could not legally leave the driveway. The bank that held Keith's business account received notice of the investigation after the Attorney General's office obtained an emergency preservation order on the account. The order restricted outgoing transfers and large withdrawals pending review of the disputed IRA deposits. Keith's business debit card was declined at a gas station on the Wednesday after the inspection. $41.16. Declined, the pump screen said refer to institution. He called the bank. The bank said the account was under a state preservation order and that restricted transactions would not be processed until the review was complete. The social fallout moved through the family the way a stain moves through cloth. Aunt Deborah called my mother on the Thursday after the confrontation, not to comfort her, to ask, very carefully, whether Doris was aware of the situation with the IRA. Doris said she did not want to discuss it. Aunt Deborah said, "Then I think we need to keep our distance for now." The call lasted 2 minutes. Keith's wife moved to her sister's house the following weekend. She took both children. She did not tell Keith she was leaving. She packed 3 bags while he was at the property trying to figure out how to get the trucks re-registered. And when he came home, the closet was half empty and the bathroom counter had 1 toothbrush instead of 4. He called her 11 times that night. She answered once. The call lasted 30 seconds. She said, "You locked a 7-year-old in a car in August." She did not say anything else because nothing else needed to be said. The elder abuse complaint moved through the Attorney General's process. The investigator requested an interview with Doris. Doris agreed. The interview was scheduled for the first week of September. Candace told me the investigator would ask Doris whether she understood the withdrawal forms when she signed them, whether Keith explained where the money was going, and whether she felt pressured. The answers to those questions would determine whether Doris was treated as a victim, a co-participant, or both. Saturday, August 31st, 2 weeks after the picnic. A state licensing inspector arrived at Keith's property at 9:40 a.m. to inventory the commercial equipment registered to Doris Adler. 2 trucks, a trailer, 3 commercial-grade mowers, a pressure washer, all registered to Doris, all uninsured, all operating commercially without proper licensing for 14 months. Doris was at Keith's house that morning. She had driven over to talk to him about the Attorney General interview, to ask him what she should say, to ask him if there was a way to make it stop. She was standing in the driveway when the inspector's White County vehicle pulled up and parked behind the trucks. She was standing on the asphalt in the blouse she wore to church, the one with the small buttons at the collar, watching a man in a county polo shirt walk around her trucks with a clipboard and a camera. The inspector photographed the license plates. He photographed the VIN numbers. He photographed the Adler landscaping logos on the doors. He asked Keith for proof of commercial insurance. Keith did not have it. He asked for proof of workers' compensation coverage. Keith did not have that either. He asked Doris if she was the registered owner of the vehicles and equipment on the property. She said yes. He wrote something on the clipboard and placed read out of service notices on both windshields and handed Keith a written stop work order. Until valid insurance and commercial registration were produced, neither truck could be used for any commercial job. Her phone rang at 9:58 a.m. My phone rang at 9:59. Her voice was not a voice. It was a sound. High, thin, breaking in the middle the way a sound breaks when the person making it has just realized that the name on every piece of paper is hers. "What did you do?" "They put notices on the trucks, Nell." They handed Keith a stop work order. "He cannot take a single job." The bank froze his account. "Debra will not return my calls." Keith's wife left. "What did you do?" The voice on the phone was the same voice that had said stop saving him 14 days ago. The same throat, the same breath, the same woman. But the pitch was different. 14 days ago, it was a command. Now it was a question. And the question was not really, "What did you do?" The question was, "Who is going to fix this?" And she was calling the only person in the family who ever could. "I did what you told me to do, Mom. I stopped saving him." The line went quiet, not silent. Quiet, the kind of quiet that happens when a sentence lands in the exact place it was aimed at and the person on the other end has no breath left to answer. Then, the call ended. Not a hang-up. A collapse. The sound of a phone being lowered from an ear by a hand that is no longer sure what to hold next. That was 2 weeks. 14 days between a boy screaming in a hot car and a mother screaming in a driveway. The same woman. The same voice. Screaming at me both times. The first time because I was saving my son. The second time because I stopped saving hers. Keith has not called me since. Doris has not called me since the driveway. Aunt Debra sent me a text in September that said, I should have said something at Easter when he grabbed Asher's arm. I did not. I am sorry for that. She did not say anything else. She did not need to. The police investigation remains open. The CPS file is active. The elder abuse complaint is under review. Candace Pryor tells me the state licensing suspension is unlikely to be lifted before next spring, and the civil demand for medical costs will be heard in small claims court in October. Tuesday morning, early October. Asher is at my apartment for the week. The balcony door is open, and the air is cool for the first time since summer. Coffee in my hands, feet on the railing. Asher is on the floor behind me with a set of wooden blocks. He is building a wall, block by block, adjusting each one, tapping the top edge with his palm the way a bricklayer checks level. The Ziploc bag with the glass shard is on the kitchen windowsill. It catches the morning sun and throws one thin line of light across the counter, slow and clean, moving like a hand on a clock that is not in a hurry. 3 miles south, there is a driveway with 2 trucks under out-of-service notices and a business under a stop work order and a mother whose name is on every document she never should have signed. The phone in that house does not ring. The woman who told me to stop saving my son sits in a kitchen where the dishes are done and the numbers do not add up and nobody comes over anymore. And on this balcony, a 7-year-old boy puts another block on top of his wall and looks up. Mom, can walls keep things out? The right ones can. He nods. Another block. The wall gets taller. The coffee goes cold. The light through the glass moves across the counter. He is building something. He does not know what it is yet. But it is his, and it is standing, and nobody is going to knock it down. If this story stayed with you, if it sat with you the way it has sat with me, then you know why it got told. Not for the filings. Not for the money. For the boy whose fists were hitting a window. Because nobody outside was coming. Someone came. Someone always will. Thank you for being here. This is Family Secret Tales. And if you have a story like mine, the comment section is open.